Never compare yourself or your life to someone else because they're different. But all too often, that's exactly what we do, and we wonder why we're not succeeding. We wonder what's holding us back. Well, in today's episode, it's episode 87 with Yuri Kruman of Master the Talk. You guys can learn about him at masterthetalk.com. This episode is very detail-oriented. I appreciate Yuri and the years that he's been working on Master the Talk. We go through the 4-pillar methodology to kind of get going in your business and some of the struggles that a lot of people do. This stuff is really powerful. I took a page of notes while doing it, and I think you guys are really going to get a lot out of this. I asked Yuri what is he best at. He says psychology and learning language. And what's cool about the learning of the language is it's not just like Spanish or French. It's about like learning the language of the people that you're talking to, the way that they act, they speak. And when you do this research and you can figure this out, it can be really powerful in your business. So episode 87 with Yuri Kruman, Master the Talk. Let's go. What was the first thing you got into with business? What was your first kind of business experience?
When I was a kid, I was maybe 7. I got into my head that I could extract iodine from walnuts. I didn't do anything with it. That was back in the Soviet Union, but something about that is very indicative of my entrepreneurship story. The first business I ever actually put together, you're going to love this one. It was called juicyjews.com. It was a Jewish social network, and I started it when I was, I think, 21, right out of college. I was in grad school in New York for neuroscience, a PhD program at NYU. I was kind of actually depressed to be there. It wasn't really my thing. I was just sort of going through the motions because I'd done the research, whatever. And I started this company, and I still have the T-shirts.
Wow. Did you have any users? Like, how did it get big? Did it do anything?
Well, it originated in actually the first global group on Facebook where I had something like 15,000 Jewish kids, 98% accuracy of my quote-unquote algorithm. And it was a massive spike in traffic, and then the damn thing died. It wasn't built well. It was built in a vacuum. I didn't really do research, but it gave me the starter bug.
Well, okay, so you get this bug. It makes you excited about this. What type of feeling was there in that you could maybe do something else, but not with juicyjews.com?
Well, part of it was organizing people, right? I'd always kind of liked hearing people's stories and just see how I can help them, right? And of course, at that point, I didn't know very much. I'm just a kid out of college, etc. Eventually, partly why I do what I do now, which is coaching and consulting, is that not only do I still really enjoy hearing people's stories, but now I'm very quick to see exactly how I can help them, whether it's to take them through a process where they discover, let's say, their life mission, values, outcomes, role. That's my 4-pillar methodology. Help them to identify negative scripts that are preventing them from becoming who they're meant to be. And also looking at what I call founding stories, which looks at things like what books did they read, who were their mentors, and how did they learn to make decisions, how did they process information, what games do they play, is it more strategy, word games, or role-playing, etc. And really going deep into a person's history to figure out what they were always meant to be so that they can put aside all the baggage and work on that on its own, but really get to the root of what they're meant to do here on this earth. How are they meant to improve the human condition?
How many people do you think are doing what they were meant to be doing?
I think that most people have elements of it, right? We talk a lot about portfolio careers, gig economy, etc. So I think a lot of millennials, partly it's because there's no patience for bullshit, for waiting around and just hoping that you'll get promoted and paid more and so on. Everyone has side projects, everyone has things that they love, but there's always a fear that, I can't just take the leap because I'm going to crash. I'm going to crash to the ground. And there's not a foundation that people have that gets them to build something in the right way. So that's why they're also chasing shiny objects. There are many different factors, but most people, I would say, they have at least clues as to what they're meant to do, but they never follow up, which is the key.
Talk about this foundation. What's involved in the foundation of that?
Okay, so again, going back to my 4-pillar methodology, just to explain it very briefly, life mission is the intellectual problem you choose to solve when time and money are not an issue. Okay, so let's say you're on vacation on a beautiful island. You're away from your worries about mortgage, about your boss, about what your wife thinks, your mother, your sister, whoever, and you decide, you know what? Okay, I hate that job in, I don't know, in finance and credit risk, whatever. I've been there, I've done that. Um, what do I choose to do? I love writing, but okay, I can't. You start with these negative scripts. Oh, I can't. I can't get a book finished, or I can't really get it to pay. You have to put all that baggage outside the door. Okay, so I love to write. What can I do? Do I write a book right up front? Do I write a blog? What is it that you are trying to do? It's somewhere in between. Let's say something very small. I'm creating a new process for project management. That's not big enough, and it's also not so big like I want to change the world, Silicon Valley nonsense, right? Something in the middle, meaning let's say I want to use my love of, I don't know, language and psychology to help people uncover what they were meant to do through writing and speaking. Okay, that's something that's somewhere in the middle. It's not something you're going to do in a year or probably 5 years, but down the line, it's definitely something that is achievable, realizable, and you need to become a master at it. So that's how you start with life mission. Second is values. Look at the people that you enjoy spending time with in your life, right? It's not your boss. It might not be your parents, but it's going to be people that are mentors that want the best for you unconditionally, that will love you no matter what you do or don't do. And what is common to those people in terms of personality traits? Are they kind or generous or hilarious or brilliant, or how do they empower you? The third piece is outcomes. Outcomes isn't deliverables. It's not spreadsheets or reports. It's looking at things like, do you enjoy delivering delight to other people? Is it curation, or is it niche knowledge? Or are you someone who loves persuading others to invest in you and your cause, or maybe you want somebody to advise you, etc. Or are you a no-nonsense operator? Do you empower others to do their life's best work, etc.? That's outcomes. And the last piece is role. Role, comes out of outcomes, and you have to name what it is that is your organic role in any situation. It's not about work. It's about in general in life. How do you go about life? How do you choose to help other people, right? Through any of those channels I mentioned. Then you look at negative scripts. What's sitting in your mind preventing you from actualizing yourself? That might be fear of failure. That might be fear of success, shiny object syndrome. Your mom said you're no good at math, so it sticks in your head, et cetera, et cetera. And then the founding stories that I mentioned.
I think with that negative script, it's so... Most people, I would actually probably believe that most people have this negative mindset of, I don't want to do this thing because I'm afraid of what people think about me, even if I just do it. And so with business, so many people, think about the failure side of it, or they think about, if you own a business, you're automatically successful. And it's just, there's so many things that are involved in a business that most people never see because most people aren't entrepreneurs. So for someone that is an owner of a business or thinking about owning a business, how do they start flipping that switch so that I can be more positive things instead of kind of negative head trash?
Sure. The first thing is never compare yourself, because nobody else's experience is fundamentally relevant to you, your potential, your path, what you're meant to do, and how you're going about doing it. You can take lessons from the paths of others that are relevant to your life. And in fact, you should go through your life learning from masters, right? People that have been in similar situations as you and learn to get over their fears and negative scripts and whatever, lack of funds or lack of understanding, and went through a process to get to a good result. Learn from those people. Right. Secondly, you need to learn to forgive yourself. Right. Everybody makes mistakes. None of us are perfect. And it's our job to do the best we can with what we have, right? You cannot go comparing yourself to someone, who has completely different sets of resources. I don't know, Mitt Romney, right? He took a quote unquote big risk when he started Bain Capital. Well, someone gave him that money to start. He didn't really take a massive risk. So you have to look at the context. And again, don't really look at other people, right? Look at what you have. What is your mission? What are your values? What are you delivering to other people to help them in their life? And then with the massive value that you deliver to those other people, you will, by necessity, derive some of it for yourself. So focus on yourself. Try to become, this is James Altucher's maxim, right? Try to become 1% better. Don't try to overhaul everything every day. It's gonna fail. Try your best. It doesn't mean you're going to succeed, but try your best to do something in your life 1% better every day. That compounds.
Why is it so important to have skin in the game? I think you just mentioned it.
Yeah.
Mitt Romney, didn't have his capital, someone else's capital. Having skin in the game. Why is that so much more important than just doing a job or a task?
It's very simple, right? I'm actually writing an article about this for helicopter parents, right? How can people like that really help their kids, not screw them up further, right? Let's say they want to help their kid learn how to do growth hacking. I don't know, because their kid owns a business. So instead of going and saying, "Hey, I found a growth hacker for you," and blah blah blah, say, "Okay, I'm happy to pay for part of your coaching in growth hacking only if you pay some part of it, but if you go and find the one that works for you." So that kind of skin in the game helps someone who's just starting out to be invested in a process. So it's not just daddy paying, and it's also hedging certain risks at the same time, right? Because it's not just you, but you have accountability. You have to have accountability to someone outside of yourself, because that is the best way to actually go through a process, finish it, learn, apply the lessons, and get better at whatever you're learning.
Yeah, oftentimes I think about reflecting back at certain situations that I went through and the pain or the positive piece of it. And if I hadn't had skin in the game, I wouldn't have felt that. You feel it very differently when you own something yourself. You have skin in the game to when someone else is basically funding that piece.
Exactly.
So you're a startup advisor. You've helped a lot of people, and I think you started alluding to this, and I think it's so important. You said learn from masters. Shark Tank came out, maybe a decade ago, and people watch that show and now think that they can provide startup advice for people. Why is it so important to get advice from someone who's actually walked that talk?
Well, part of it is, when, let's say, you go get a degree, you might go to an MBA program, right? And again, it's not to knock MBAs or any other degree, but think about the people that are teaching you. Have they actually been working on a business anytime in the last 5 to 10 years, at least, ideally even working on something now? That's a very simple thing, right? When you look at the evolution of business models, tools, software, the pace of innovation, it is so blindingly fast and getting faster that all the theories of even last year or 3-5 years ago might be completely outdated already. And the simplest thing you can do is go learn from somebody actually in the trenches right now. And the trenches might, it's not just sort of advising from a high level, it's working on building a business. Learn from those people that are actually building something, scaling something, growing something. That's the most valuable kind of lesson, rather than all the theories in the world, I think.
I have a few friends who got MBAs and they were complaining about it. And a few years ago, I was like, I don't understand. It seems like this isn't a bad idea.
Yep.
And so I started doing some research, and the average is like 140K per year for an MBA. And then so I started kind of taking an inventory of what you get, and it's not that much. And if you could take that money and instead create relationships with people, you probably are going to have a better network, because ultimately that's probably what you're getting, right? You're getting a little bit of knowledge, which you could probably learn anywhere, but then you're getting this alumni thing. And so if you can create your own alumni network with that 140K a year, imagine taking 1,400 people out for $1,000 dinner, right?
You bet.
I mean, or just do a bunch of like $5 coffees. I mean, you can do a lot with that money, but I think people, it's the I have this thing. The certificate says I'm awesome, so now I could, be better. I'm with you on that one. What's something that a lot of business owners that you talk to kind of that constantly have as an issue as to why they can't move forward?
Okay. Well, you look at several different factors. This is also a little bit more of an academic analysis, right? So when you look at why startups fail, I'm actually writing a chapter for a book that discusses this exact question: what mistakes not to make. It's called Cycles. So the first and most fundamental mistake that many business owners make is in the beginning, when they don't have a clear vision of, again, what is their mission, what are their values, what is it that they're delivering to others, and what is their role in this process. Okay, this is the same process I take all my business coaching clients through, as well as career coaching clients, because the fundamental thing about alignment, you want to align the people that you work with, and people aren't just your COO or your C-suite officers. It's everybody working with you, which could mean mentors, advisors, employees, and even vendors, believe it or not, right? Because you want to make sure that everywhere, in every direction from your core and your mission, people are aligned. They're not going to argue with you about everything. They know what you're setting out to do. So if you're looking to, let's say, I don't know, cure AIDS in Thailand, and you're looking for a vaccine, right? Everyone is on board that this is the most important thing right now. And whatever their role is in that hub and spoke model, everyone refers back to the center. They know that you're the core of it. You're the driver, you're the energy, etc. So that kind of alignment is the single biggest reason why many entrepreneurs fail to progress beyond the beginning. They can't eloquently explain that mission, values, outcomes, and role. They can't really create messaging around it. They can't get good PR. They can't get buy-in from a lot of stakeholders, which means also clients, because there's a wishy-washiness. They're not clear on themselves, and their brand suffers from that wishy-washiness as well.
So knowing that, I mean, it's what are you the best at, right? And then there's some other pieces with there. Like, how does someone know what they're best at?
Well, there's a process, like I said, right? So not to beat a dead horse, but 4 pillars: life, mission, values, outcomes, and role. You look at negative scripts. You look at founding stories. Why is this important? When you're starting a business, you are everything. You're doing everything in that business. You're working on every element of it. But fundamentally, you are the person talking about it all day to everyone, everywhere. So, it's up to you to really be clear on who you are, your mission, how you're going about it. So even if you make mistakes, your energy alone will get a lot of people to want to work with you, whether that's as investors, advisors, employees, etc. That clarity on your mission, and also your ability to learn quickly. And those are actually the 2 factors that are most important, I argue, in all of my coaching, for people that you work with. It's not about, they went to Harvard Business School and they know all these theoretical frameworks. It's very much about how quickly can they learn and implement what they do. I can give you a very quick example, which I think is illustrative. Several years ago, I got a message from a friend from undergrad, and this girl's absolutely brilliant. She went to Wharton undergrad. She has a master's in biotech. She worked in VC, and she went to Harvard Business School. And here she is afterwards. She's interviewing with startups. Okay, and she's going around. She can get the interviews, but she seems to really not be able to progress. And, it took me a few minutes, just to catch up, understand what's going on. And I realized part of it is because she's never really had practical work experience in business, right? Being a VC and doing all the financial modeling, that's one thing, but running a business, not there. Secondly, what is the most important thing that we just talked about for an entrepreneur versus a Fortune 500 company? It's looking at, is this person aligned with my mission fundamentally? Do they have something in there, what I call founding stories, which predispose them to want to work on this above all other problems? Someone coming from Harvard can work on any problem they want. Why are you here? Why are you wasting my time? Right? And the second thing is, because someone like that is preloaded with all those theories and frameworks, how quick are they actually to learn and implement? Right? So in a way, it's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy. If you learn all those frameworks and theories, then you're more likely to use them in a large corporate setting. In a startup, none of that stuff applies. You're putting out fires, you're pivoting left and right. You don't have the time to analyze all of that. Just get things done.
Yeah, I often think, because at some point in my business lifespan, I had to do everything. But I kind of jotted down mental notes or written down things that I hated doing. The bookkeeping of the business, the cleaning of the stalls or whatever. And these are, you just take these notes, and when you can afford to get rid of them so that someone else can do it, you start doing it. So what is Yuri Kruman the best in the world at?
Two things, language and psychology. So
Okay.
not just, I don't mean just, learning a new language, Italian, French, whatever. I mean, actually learning the language of an industry, learning the language of, a group of people. So let's say I want to go and access a group of investors that are, I don't know, coming from Israel, right? So the culture of that group of people is going to be wildly different. A lot of them are army buddies, usually from the same unit. And, they have certain investment criteria that are more likely to skew toward their market in Israel, right? So I need to go and understand, first of all, what are the different companies in that ecosystem? Usually funded, started by people from the same unit, for example. Usually it's 8200 military intelligence. And what do they care about in their investments, right? So I need to go and learn that language in which they speak, which isn't just Hebrew, obviously. I need to understand what they care about, what drives them, right? The same reference, right? What are their values? And how can I deliver massive value to them? So maybe they're looking to access a particular market, which is small and unknown in the US. Okay, so I bring that massive value to them, and I make myself a part of that conversation by knowing the references, knowing the people involved, knowing the companies, etc. That's how I present myself as a quote unquote insider, or sufficiently enough to get that conversation somewhere.
How do you start learning that type of stuff? How do you learn the lingo, if you will?
Mhm. It's not just about the lexicon and the buzzwords. This is very, very important, right? You want to first of all be human, because that's the first thing anybody encounters and the first thing they care about. Are you real? Do you actually care about our stories, where we come from, who we are? And for me, the reason that I'm so good at it is because partly I'm an immigrant from Russia to the US. I grew up in Kentucky, of all places, right? Then I had to go to school in Philadelphia, to Penn, where the language was completely different, much more pre-professional, right? So people are all ending up in business school, law school, in medicine, etc. And at every stage of that process, someone, like myself, being a writer, someone who's, loving hearing stories, first I had to listen. Then I could understand the point of reference, the backgrounds that, maybe they all came from the same high schools, their parents all went to the same school. So slowly you start layering the context. And that's partly because I've always been an outsider and I've always had to make myself an insider. And it's that kind of hybrid, being an insider and outsider at the same time, that really makes you good at learning both sides.
I think all these are really connecting really, really well. So we kind of understand the values, the missions, what we want. But how do you then take that to the next level and get your messaging out? How do you actually get seen by press, a different business owner, a customer? How are you seen once you have all that stuff in place?
Okay, well, my experience with PR, and I don't think it's just my experience, is that you have to start with getting your own story straight, meaning you go through that process, 4 pillars, you figure out what you're here to do. Then you figure out what's your core part of that mission, meaning maybe you're focusing on raising money, you're focusing on messaging, whatever. Then you need to start telling your story to, first of all, just as many people as will listen to it, because you need to just get your story in a compact form. And then you start specializing. Okay, for investors, they want to hear this set of things, right? It's kind of a 360-degree view. For advisors, they need to see that, I really have my stuff straight. I have a track record. I'm bringing a lot to the table. Plus, I'm giving them equity. For employees, they need to see that I have that absolute fire burning in me. I'm willing to put in 80-hour work weeks. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. right? So every audience has its own set of things that it needs to be clear on and to hear. So the messaging will start becoming specialized once you have all the raw material on the table. And the raw material is all about who you are, where you came from, why is this the most important thing on earth? Why, are you a special human being? You have a special sauce. You figured out who you are. That's what people want to work with. They don't want to work with someone who's wishy-washy or not clear on who they are. They don't have that full energy. They don't bring their fullest self to the table.
So you talked about energy a couple of times, but then also kind of the process behind it. How, if you're super energetic, how much further can you get if you don't have those other things in place yet, but you're bringing energy to the table?
Well, if you're really good at pitching, then you're probably never going to go poor. But I really, again, I'm someone whose reference point is being a total introvert when I was a kid, right? My whole thing was I would always listen and try to understand. Where am I? What is going on here? But I wouldn't really participate. Then with time, I kind of just stepped out of my shell. I gave a speech at my graduation in front of 5,000 people, which was kind of a trip. I was like, this isn't actually that big a deal. And, with time, you start seeing that the only kind of work that you can do is on yourself first. Even if you have no money in the world, you have no support, work on yourself. The other things will show up, meaning your confidence, your energy, your clarity. Those things will be what's attractive to others, everyone from investors down to vendors. And that's how I view the journey of being an entrepreneur. Start with yourself first, get yourself straight, then you can run, like crazy and break things and so on and so forth.
I love breaking things. It's fun. So you put all that together. You've been able to get some major publications. You've been featured in major publications. Walk me through kind of the process of how some of that started.
Okay, yeah. So this is something I give a workshop on. So it's several elements are in place. Number one is you try a lot of different things when you pitch, whether it's journalists, bloggers, whomever, right? You need to understand how to deliver value. Meaning, let's say they write about startups having to do, let's say, started by immigrants from the former Soviet Union. You happen to be one of them. You're doing something that may not be in the usual repertoire of those entrepreneurs. So you tell your story in a way that says, I know where you're coming from. I know what you care about. Here is something for you to write about, something really interesting, right? So you have to really do your research. 20% of it is writing, 80% of it is research. So when you just start out, you don't have any connections. You don't have much of a portfolio. So start writing on Quora. Start writing on Reddit. Okay, start with the absolute basics. Go and look for ways you can help people out. Look at the threads that have the largest number of followers, meaning there are more and more people actually interested in this. Read what others right? Don't repeat what they've said. Try to add something new to the conversation. Make it easy. Make it a list, something that's easy to use. Like I'll give you an example. I wrote one post, 50 mini habits to improve your life. Okay. I just wrote it because, I don't know, stream of consciousness. I'm like, I like giving people advice, and I have a lot from all my failures and travels and whatever. So I wrote this piece. Out of nowhere, it gets picked up by Inc., meaning the Quora editor, put my piece on their Inc. page. So, okay, there's Inc. I get a message from a guy at PBS Next Avenue. I love your list. This is amazing. Can we pick it up for PBS Next Avenue? Awesome, great. Things like that. So sometimes when you help people out and you do a good job in terms of formatting and adding value, people will find you themselves. So the Quora and Reddit. Then you start on lower level publications like lifehack.org, for example. Very easy to get into. There are things like Thrive Global, also relatively easy. You get on kind of, blogs with a solid readership, but that might not be that hard to get in. And you slowly build a portfolio. Again, you keep telling your story. It evolves because now you're also a writer. But don't say writer, say author, right? Author is better than writer. Maybe you've given speaking engagements, so you're a speaker. Maybe, you teach for a startup accelerator, so, you're an instructor. So use everything that you have at your disposal everything from your background is fair game, right? Formulate it in a way that's relevant for the audience that you're pitching or presenting to, and up level immediately. So for me, a great opportunity came when I applied for something called the Forbes Coaches Council. Right, so it's $1,200. A lot of people don't know about this because, like, oh my God, it's so hard to get into Forbes. Yes, of course, it's hard, but when you're a coach, you have a track record of testimonials, reviews, people you've helped, you can get onto the Forbes Coaches Council. Now it's, they have their criteria. You apply, you do your best. You get in, you can write for Forbes. Then leveraging that, you can try to get into other places. People do expert roundups. I've been on a platform called The Muse. I got on there as a coach. I helped, ironically, a guy who got an offer from The Muse, was a good friend of mine. And I said, don't pay me, help me get on their platform. So he did that. That launched me into a whole bunch of these features like Mashable, Fast Company, et cetera, because they syndicate, right? You have to understand that all these platforms, they syndicate on each other's platforms. So if you can get into expert roundups, you can, be featured in an expert roundup on Forbes, and these things spread out and out and out. Leverage them to get into regular writing gigs. Start at the lowest level, go up, produce more pieces, leverage them to get into the top publications. That's my journey.
Love it. It's so important. For someone that's not a good writer, but they understand that writing is important for them, how do they get that content on a Quora, on a Reddit, or kind of a local level media?
Again, I really think, there's very simple tools like Haro, help a reporter out, right? So that's something very easy. It doesn't mean it's easy to get featured, but you start learning how to pitch. You can, take courses on this stuff. You can get coaches on this stuff. You can look up templates. You have to keep trying and evolving, right? Telling your story and helping add value to journalists, bloggers, etc. So Haro is a great one. You have tools like justreachout.io, which I highly recommend. It indexes Haro, and indexes Reddit, and Quora, etc. Plus shows you, let's say, which journalists write about what subject. So you search, millennial entrepreneurs, and you see that these 50 writers write about them, and then you can pitch them directly through that tool. So there are tools like that. There are many ways you can go about skinning this cat.
Sure. So indexing, meaning it's repeatable, searchable content that you're going to find everywhere. And some of the challenges with, other social medias is that it doesn't necessarily pull up that content for you to find it forever. So you can have a following, but it's hard to have that searchable piece.
Exactly.
And that's something that I was talking with a real estate agent recently. He's like, how do I improve my marketing? I'm like, you can't even be found at this point because you're not doing anything that's, searchable. And he was like, oh, I thought I was just supposed to, improve my Instagram account. And I'm like, yes, do that, but make sure that you can still be found over and over again.
And I want to just add one thing. I think this is actually very, very important for all entrepreneurs. So when you're building your brand, you want to be consistent as possible. And you want to not shell out a lot of money, any money, I would say, on SEO. In fact, one of the reasons why you create content for other platforms is because those platforms will do the SEO for you. That's the whole point. Something like Forbes, their headlines pop up on the first page of Google pretty quickly because they know how to create good headlines, for example, right? And when you're on these different platforms, let's say as a coach, you're on Muse, Numi, Life Coach, blah, 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 all of those platforms are paying for SEO because they have to swim in this soup. But never pay for it yourself until your business is ready for that. Don't waste your money up front on PR or SEO. That's my 2 cents.
100% agree. I think most people spend money because they think it's going to work, and then it doesn't, and they haven't even figured that out. So tell me about like the bio, the links, the descriptions that you're putting in. So you do this article, you're on Forbes. How do you get the attention back to you?
Well, they link back to my website. All of these expert roundups link back to my website. At some point you do a Google search and you see that, people excerpt the Forbes piece. They like what you have to say about, customer experience or PR or whatever. And, it's not because these pieces in Forbes magically make for, hundreds of thousands of views. It just doesn't work this way, right? Most people don't realize, oh, I got into Forbes, I got into HuffPost. It doesn't actually mean that you get hundreds of thousands of eyeballs. It just, most of these articles have a few thousand views, but who is looking at those articles? That's what matters,
Yeah,
right? The right people will find them.
yeah, it's who's looking at it, but then also how do you leverage that to get to that next piece, right? I love Haro. It's one of my favorite tools. Probably had dozens, hundreds of articles be featured because of raising my hand and filling out that stuff. It takes time, but it's you're finding someone that's looking for that thing right now. So in the other case, you're trying to build a relationship with someone for a long time, and hopefully something happens. Where with Haro, it's that person like saying, "Hey, I need you right now. Like, come to me now." And it's a great tool for someone that is, thinking about keywords and ways to describe themselves. How buzzwordy should they be, or how? Cause I think you used the word wishy-washy before. Like, how does someone describe themselves to be seen when the words that people are looking for are heavily used?
Well, I think before you look left and right and everywhere else at what everyone else is doing, again, start with yourself. If you're not sure what it is that you project or what's your special sauce, ask people around you that you trust, that want the best for you. Ask them, when you think of me, what are the top 3 things that come to mind? Just right away, right? Sometimes it's a very, very simple, very, useful exercise, because sometimes you'll learn something about yourself which you didn't know. Maybe people think that, you're an excellent writer, even though you thought, okay, maybe I'm only middling. So sometimes what others say about you, just, what comes to mind, becomes a big part of your brand. Like for me, language and psychology are my 2 main pillars. Those are my 2 main superpowers, in the absence of everything else. And based on that, why is it that I called it Master the Talk? Because every single encounter, every single conversation doesn't have to be, like we're doing now, could be over email, any forum. It is an opportunity to add massive value and to take some of that for yourself. We have to know how to manage that conversation in each case. And that's really my special sauce. It's taking that process of managing that conversation to add value and to take value myself.
It's so interesting thinking about that question. When you think of me, what are the top 3 things that come to mind? I'm going to actually do that today. I'm going to ask a group of people, maybe on Facebook. I love that. But one thing that I started recognizing is the words that I was using to describe my business weren't what people were thinking of me as.
Exactly.
And it wasn't the question that kept coming up over and over again. It's how do I get exposure for my business? How do I market my business? How do I be seen? And so you start using that scenario, being like, this is what people are looking for. Stop telling them something that they don't care about. Instead, talk about the things that they're asking you for over and over and over again. And ultimately, that's kind of how we've evolved is we used to be a startup accelerator. No one really cares about a startup accelerator. What they want is to grow their business. How can I get more exposure for your business? So it's really understanding the words and the language that people are using. And I think it can be so impactful if you start answering the questions that people are looking for over and over again.
Do user research, in other words.
100%. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Why do you wake up every morning? Like what's something that excites you about Master the Talk?
Well, I mean, aside from, my wife and my kids, the reason that I wake up is because I know that today with my, let's say client calls or even potential client calls, I know that I'm going to be transforming somebody's life. And it's a big responsibility, but there's a reason why I do this work. Because I think I'm actually very good at language and psychology, understanding where this person's coming from, getting their story out, helping them to formulate their brand, their messaging, that really helps with actually growing a business. So that business can hire people, add value, and improve other people's lives. So it's actually this cumulative effect to everything that I do, which means I have to do it in the absolute best shape, meaning I have to take care of my health, and I have to also do my best work with every single encounter. And that's something that I love, because I'm also, in a way, completely free to do it. right? I don't need to mince words. I don't need to work with just anyone. If someone's not ready for transformation, God bless, I have somebody else I can send you to. But I choose the people that I work with. I choose the way in which I communicate with them and add value. And I know that everything that I do has that massive cumulative effect, which is really the big picture.
Powerful. What's something on your bucket list?
I don't know that I have a bucket list. There are many things that I want to do. Part of that is, continuing my, ironically, my fiction writing. That's something that is, a little bit on the back burner. I've put out 2 novels, but life gets in the way, which is fine. I also want to really get my message out to the world. What is my message? It's a message of empowering people that may not have the full context, may not have all the tools, the finances, etc., but have tremendous potential, right? How do you realize that potential, whether it's in your business, how do you start it, how do you grow it, how do you access the right audience, and also how to manage your career, right? So those 2 elements are really what drive me. I want to empower people that, let's say, are middle class, lower middle class, bright kids, go to good schools, but top out at some point because they can't, they don't understand how to learn their own language, their own psychology, and how to become their fullest, best person. So that's what I do. That's what I'm trying to do with the largest audience possible.
I think you do it well. What's something about you that we didn't talk about that maybe people don't know about you?
I'll tell you a funny story. It shows you my imagination. So my childhood hero was Garry Kasparov. Is I don't know, something like 15-time champion of the world in chess. So he and I have a funny history. Not only I have the same birthday as him, and I grew up, idolizing this guy. When I was in law school, I got a call from a friend. I have a connection at the New Yorker magazine. They need some help doing fact checking. Oh, awesome. I mean, imagine, I'm a writer. I'm writing my first novel and, come work for the New Yorker for a week. So screw law school. I went for a week to work for the New Yorker. I'm working on this piece. I get a piece of paper across my desk, call Garry Kasparov to see if he actually said what he's quoted as saying. Like, you can imagine, my palms are sweaty. I'm like, hi, in Russian, Mr. Kasparov, thank you for taking my call. Did you actually say this? Blah, blah, blah. Yes, it was very nice. Yes, okay. Thank you. Have a nice day. So then something like, okay, he's just a normal person. Why am I like, what is this? Sweaty palms. Okay, so that went, the article got published, everything was great. 18 months later, I walk into a grocery store on the Upper West Side, and my jaw drops, and I kind of like stammer out in Russian, "Are you Garry Kasparov?" So, usually like, "Oh, no, everyone thinks I am," or like, "Oh, no big deal." He staggers backwards and he runs the hell away from me. Like, what the hell just happened? My childhood hero just ran away. I thought I took a shower. What's going on here? And then I realized it was exactly the time of the election in Russia, and he actually seriously thought I was a KGB hitman. So
wow.
sometimes,
have you seen him since?
Well, no, but there is another connection. Our wife's OBGYN is the same guy. So like one day we're in his office and he's like telling us, "Oh yeah, I had dinner with Gary and his wife the other week." I'm like, the world is small. Even in New York, even life is funny.
Crazy.
So laugh now.
Absolutely. Live life to its fullest every day. Yuri, I really appreciate your time. This was a lot of fun. And
Thank you, Zach. Same for me.
If you guys are interested, you guys can check him out. Not just at masterthetalk.com, but at Yuri, Yuri at masterthetalk.com. We'll have all this in the description, the show notes below. Thank you. Thanks a bunch, Yuri.
Thank you so much, Zach. All the best to you.
Absolutely.